As an African-American kid, growing up in rural Texas, going to the movies was a treat. The local movie theater, the only one in town, was a single screen with a small thrust stage. On those Saturday mornings, this space transformed from Jim Crow seating to open seating, allowing us to come down from the balcony. It was on those Saturday mornings, the first showing of the day, that African-American films were played. Going to the movies was our reward after a morning spent cleaning the house to Mama's specifications. Daddy would give us enough money to cover the cost of tickets, a large popcorn to share, and sodas. There was usually a talent contest on that small stage and cartoons on that wide screen that preceded the main feature of the day. Sitting in the dark, cool theater, we were transfixed by images of black characters as we had never seen. Blackula, Shaft, Sheba, Buck, Preacher, and the Black Samurai were larger than life. We knew nothing of stereotypes or tropes. We only saw stars like Richard Roundtree, Sidney Poitier, Pam Grier, Harry Belafonte, Cicely Tyson, and William Marshall, who portrayed characters that were badassed, nappy-headed, and unapologetically black. The history of African-American cinema is littered with the realities of racism, oppression, and struggle, contrasted with film scenes of boundless joy, endless hope, and artistic spirit. The uphill battle by black filmmakers and performers to achieve acceptance and respect is far from over. Even though the industry has made great strides, an ugly blot remains on the page of film history. Even as recent as 2015, the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite was making the social media rounds. The long journey that Sidney Poitier spoke about in his acceptance speech for winning his Best Actor award, Oscar, for Lilies of the Field in 1963 is still being traveled. Yet, with new films with all-black cast and crews, with box office smashes such as Hidden Figures and Get Out, the once separate cinema is proving that it can keep up and even surpass the Hollywood establishment's expectations. Habari Ghani, what's the news? Saving our culture, African-American film history, from race films to blaxploitation films to the film Get Out. I'm Dr. Ardencie Hall-Karambé, and welcome to The Market. I'm Dr. Ardencie Hall-Karambé. Welcome to The Market on CCP TV, the Emmy-nominated educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. Today I am here with two of my good friends, Rel Dowdell and Clayton Prince. Rel is an American screenwriter, film director, and film producer. He was born and raised here in Philadelphia, and he received his bachelor's degree in English magna cum laude from Fisk University, and a master's degree in film and screenwriting from Boston University. His first film, Train Ride, received substantial critical acclaim and was produced using independent funding, but the film was later picked up by Sony in 2005 with tremendous financial success. Train Ride is ranked as one of the best American films of the year by veteran critics across the country, including the Boston Phoenix. The film garnered high praise from film historians and has won the Best Feature at the American Theater of Harlem Film Festival in 2005. In addition, the film featured the last performance of acclaimed veteran actress Esther Rolle. Rel's next effort came around in 2010 with a film called Changing the Game, which was shot in Philadelphia, and it's coming out in 2012, or came out in 2012, okay? Clayton Prince is a native of Philadelphia as well. He is an actor, singer, producer, and director, and he knew early on that the entertainment field was his calling. By the age of 12, he had secured professional gigs throughout the city where he honed his chops and learned his skills. By the time he reached his teens, Clayton was recognizing that acting and theater was his passion, and he enrolled in the High School for Creative and Performing Arts. At 17, he was cast in a Boston local production of the play American Passion, opposite a then 17-year-old Robert Downey Jr. Clayton went on to Temple, where he received a scholarship in mathematics. But after only a year, he realized that, not his gig. So he landed a role in the film The Last Dragon and began to pursue his dreams by moving to New York City. Within months, he had garnered one of the most recognized roles in sitcom history. As a budding actor, he was cast as Denise's reggae singing boyfriend, Eddie Lockhart, in The Cosby Show, and which is now a classic and which broke the Nelson ratings at that time period. Soon after his explosive sitcom debut, he originated the role of Seaweed J. Stubbs in John Waters' 1988 film Hairspray, where he starred opposite Ricky Lake, Debbie Harry, Jerry Stiller, and Sonny Bono. In the 1990s, Clayton returned to TV and was a regular on the NBC soap opera Another World, where he won critical acclaim as the role of Reuben Lawrence. After 2 seasons with Another World, CBS noticed Clayton's good looks and gifted talents and offered the actor his own television series entitled Dark Justice, where he portrayed the character of Jericho Gibbs Gibson. Shot on location in Spain and Los Angeles, the drama ran for 3 seasons and was seen in over 50 countries around the world. For the next few years, Clayton spent much of his time between New York and LA working on various projects and appearing as guest roles on certain shows such as Spin City, Third Watch, The Wayans Brothers, and Hack. In 2007, Clayton was cast opposite of Vivica A. Fox in the 20th century film Cover, directed by Bill Dukes. It became a cult classic, and once again, critics and fans alike signed on to Clayton's stellar performance. After a 2-year hiatus due to a car accident, Clayton is back on the scene. He's recently developed his own production company called Magic Management and is the producer and director and star of a new web series called Cream that's scheduled and debuted during the summer of 2013. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate both of you coming to the show today.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. So today's subject, we're going to talk about African American cinema. First question for you gentlemen. Looking at African American cinema, it was the first independent cinema in the United States. Do you think it's important that race films, such as those done by Oscar Micheaux, Spencer Williams, and the Lincoln Motion Picture Company, looking at today's film, do you think those companies were important to today's filmmakers, and how did they influence you, if in any shape, form, or fashion?
Well, you know what? The first film that I remember seeing that people might have called a race film was Cabin in the Sky. I loved me some Cabin in the Sky. It was wonderful. The special effects were amazing. Anyone who doesn't know the story, you should really go see it. Oh man, it was a great story. Wonderfully told, wonderfully directed.
Ethel Waters.
Yeah. Oh man, Lena Horne. There was some Rochester.
Yes.
Oh,
stellar performances.
Yeah, and you know what I really loved about films like that, which I don't want to throw shade on any current filmmakers, but films like Cabin in the Sky, and even to a strong degree, The Little Rascals, believe it or not. I don't know if you can say that as a race film, but my point is, those were films that didn't even focus on race at all. They just told great stories through our perspective, but it didn't focus or touch on race at all. I look at the old Our Gang stuff, and this is a time in our history where, of course, there was segregation and all those ugly things, but Hal Roach, who was the creator of Our Gang, had black young kids as equals and never mentioned race at all. We mention race more now with the current filmmakers than Hal Roach ever did.
Yeah. Let me piggyback that.
Yeah.
Because
or Cabin in the
She
Sky.
said Oscar Micheaux, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Oscar Micheaux to me was a pioneer because he wasn't afraid to talk about race. Matter of fact, he made a rebuttal film to Birth of a Nation.
Indeed.
Birth of a Nation is probably, I'll say it on camera 100 times, was a film that embodies stereotypes and set back African Americans that we're still fighting back today. With the
Black
stereotypes
actors were
from.
not in Birth of a Nation.
Right.
They had, that's
But
when
the
they had,
images,
blackface.
the images were so denigrating and so damaging, right? That African Americans today are still fighting against Birth of a Nation. But Oscar Micheaux, his friends called him Oscar Micheaux, made a film called Within Our Gates to rebut that film. So the fact that Oscar Micheaux was brave enough back then to say, even though Birth of a Nation was called this classic motion picture that broke down all
and it
these
was used
zeros, right?
as KKK.
Yes.
Propaganda.
But it was
Propaganda
vaulted as
and
this
recruiting.
great landmark benchmark film. But here's Oscar Micheaux, a
And the
small
President of the United
independent.
States actually
Right.
praised the film.
And you got someone like Oscar Micheaux who's using his own money, independently funded, to make this small film, but it rebut Birth of a Nation. So as an African American filmmaker, independent, making very small films that some called crude because he didn't have a lot of money to finance them, but he had the courage to go out here and make a film to show that African Americans were indeed victims of racism. We're not all stereotypical. To me, Oscar Micheaux was definitely a benchmark because he was someone who used his platform as an African American filmmaker to make something to rebut probably the most racist
counter,
cinema
Yeah.
excursion in history.
And I know that my opinions are not, all very popular ones, but I do feel, like I said, like you made a great point. And I just feel that there was a time when, put it this way, music and television programming and film programming, it teaches and gives subconscious lessons to everyone that watches, whether they realize it or not. And I think a lot of musicians and hip-hop artists don't get that. And some of the messages that they're teaching people are very harmful, current-wise, in modern day cinema and music. But again, going back to things, when there was a time when we weren't supposed to be as enlightened, as I thought, wow, things like even Buck and the Preacher, and oh man, one of my favorite films ever was To Serve with Love. They touched on race, but just having the presence of a black male that was in charge of this predominantly white school was so powerful that they didn't even have to say it. It was just self-evident. It was such a great thing, and I loved that.
And this company that you mentioned, the Lincoln Motion Picture Company, first African American company to finance and distribute their own films, right? So even today in 2017, we don't really have a mechanism that finances and distribute. The key to all films is distribution. Producing it is one aspect, as Clayton can attest. The key though for any film that's made is distribution. So gotta give the Lincoln Motion Picture Company credit for being a pioneer, saying not only can we finance these films, we might not find out, we'll be our own outlet, so make sure people or our people can see them. That's why Oscar Micheaux, Spencer Williams, who played Andy on Amos and Andy, was vilified for that, but later on came back and fought against some stereotypes in his own way. And the Lincoln Motion Picture Company all have a place that helped us get to where we are today.
All the people who criticize Amos and Andy, I wonder how many of them actually saw Amos and Andy. I saw it. That show was brilliant. That show.
Their comic timing was incredible.
That show was brilliant.
And that actually is going to lead into another question when we talk about Amos and Andy and those types of stereotypical characters. So a follow-up to that question, with the work being done by Oprah's own network and Tyler Perry Productions, so on and so forth, and Netflix and HBO and all those, who are now producing black-themed, black-focused projects that would never get played on mainstream television or big screen TVs, do you believe that there's still this need for a separate cinema? Or is it a matter of production companies that just now want to focus on black subjects in the black community? Do you think there's a need for a separate cinema, or just keep doing what we're doing at this process?
You want me to take that or you?
Yeah, you go first. Yeah, go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
'Cause I want to step on your toes.
Oh,
No,
somebody
no,
dive in.
You go ahead. I'll jump right on. Go ahead.
For yes, having to have distribution and to have production, those are amazing things to have in place. Oprah Winfrey has done it so far. TV1 has done it so far. BET has done it so far. The sad truth and reality of it is that if you do, I won't say Oprah, but I know BET has been known for not paying as much as say CBS or ABC, and so sometimes, yeah, you want to work. Sometimes you want to get paid.
Right.
You know, you
Yeah.
want to get the same amount of money that your counterparts are making. It's like, wow, I'm on a series. Wow, it's like, hey, you must be making 7 figures a week. It's like, no, I'm making 3 figures a week. Like, what? You know, the disparity between that. And that's how, sadly, it has been oftentimes where a lot of black productions, all black production companies and distributions just don't receive the money that others do make. I know that, but not all, and that's the thing that's frustrating. I mean, I have so many friends who are on BET productions, and they're just so frustrated. They're like, "Wow, I'm working every day, and just not getting the money that my other counterparts."
Even with the union scale, they're still not. How do they get it?
See, you said the magic word there, scale. Scale. That's like saying minimum wage in entertainment. So yeah, you're making minimum wage, and minimum wage ain't bad. But when you see other people who are like, what scale?
Yeah,
You know,
and people got to take into account like how hard it is to get product made. Like I'll give you a perfect example. You said Oprah Winfrey, so she's doing a film right now on the Henrietta Lacks story. Henrietta Lacks was a big deal, right? Her family is still living, but if you read up on this film, Oprah Winfrey right now is having a great deal of trouble bringing this film to the screen. The film has been made. The family is still arguing with her, and they're talking about their depictions are inaccurate. So this is Oprah Winfrey, who to me is at the pinnacle of the chain of someone who has the clout to get a film made, or about anybody. But even she right now is wrestling with the intricacies of making films. It's
not
even
easy
hard
for anyone.
It's not easy for Oprah Winfrey, Clayton Prince, Rel Dowdell, Ardencie Hall, whoever wants to embark on making a film. People don't have to understand that making a film is probably one of the hardest things that you will ever do. That's why people don't want to do it.
Yeah, but if I can interject.
Am I right or wrong?
Oh, very true. But I would like to interject.
Go ahead.
It's not just hard for black folk.
It's hard for
It's
everybody.
hard for everybody.
It's absolutely
Everybody. I don't
something.
care, white, black, and absolutely
But
everything
the
in
beauty,
between.
let me add one thing.
It
The
is
beauty of making films to me is that it doesn't matter whether you have a low budget or a lot of money. If the film is good, the film is good. You mentioned small films, race films. Those films can be just as impactful as a film that's made for $100 million. It depends on who's telling the story, how well it's executed, and how great the performances are.
But everything is relative. Because yes, do black folk have it hard? Absolutely. Duh. Do Asian Americans have it easier? Nope. Nope. Do Latino American production companies have it easier? Nope. And relatively speaking, we have it a little bit easier than they. They do. Everything is relative. When was the last time we saw any all Asian cast of anything? Only thing is ABC. I gotta give them credit. Fresh Off the Boat. What a great show.
Joy Luck Club.
And how long ago was that film?
How long was it?
How many decades ago was that?
Yeah.
Let's not
At
say
least
years.
two.
And
Not three.
Crouching
Decades.
Tiger. I mean,
And that's
And
even
how
for
many decades is that?
Right.
And
So-
those weren't an American produced.
Right,
film.
right.
Those were an American production. So relatively speaking, yeah, things are hard, but they're hard for everybody. And when we were speaking before, the business of show business. Yeah, it's easy to talk about the politics of show business, but the business of show business is everyone makes a product, just like any store, any product, whether it's soap, whether it's a movie. You have a product that you're trying to sell somebody. You want to sell that bar of soap or that movie to as many people as possible. And when you're from a business side, you really don't care if they're black, white, or anything in between.
You're right.
You just want everybody to buy your product.
You're right.
And the sad truth is that it is an easier sell, not an impossible sell, but it is an easier sell if you have a white lead in the political climate right now to sell internationally, which it was a painful truth that I discovered when I was selling one of my products at the Cannes Film Festival. It's easier to get an unknown white person who's a lead in a project sold internationally. Europe will take it, Africa will take it, Asia will take it, but if there is a black lead, everyone's getting a real pick and say, whoa, 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 who's the lead? Is it one of the 3 people who can carry black films? Is it Will Smith? No. Is it Denzel? Nope. Well, who's in it and why should we buy it? As opposed to, oh, hey, you just bought something that there was, an unknown was the lead. That is the hardship that we have. But I understand, politically speaking, or economically speaking, you want to sell that product. And it hurt me that even in Africa, they were like, hey, okay, if they're buying a black product, they're like, well, we have our own black product. Why should we buy your black product?
Right.
That's the business of it. And again, unless you have a powerful story that they don't feel that they can emulate for the same price that they can buy it from you for, then they will buy it. So that's the burden of creating something on a low budget that people will not want to steal, that it'll be cheaper for them to buy from you than to steal and make their own production version of it. That's the thing that is the struggle.
So this question has 2 parts. First, what is your favorite blaxploitation film? And second, if you could remake that film, well, why? Why would you remake it? If you could remake it, which one would it be, and and if you could remake it?
Well, it's funny. That's a good question. I'm gonna tell you why, because it has a multi-layer for me. I'd probably say Coolie High, and let me tell you why. Eric Monti, who created that movie, is my dear friend, and me and Eric I've seen Eric go through this whole industry. Me and him talk on a very regular basis. Coolie High was something that he based his life on. It was his story about him growing up in Cabrini Green, and he was the Preach character. And he had a friend named Apache, who was the Cochise character. Well, American International Films changed it to Cochise and Americanized some of the names, but that film, to me, even to this day, personifies a lot of what young African American males go through in America. You grow up with people, you're close to them, and you lose them for whatever reasons. And that film, to me, is the modern day for African Americans. When that film was out, like a Shakespearean tragedy. Coolie High. If
Michael
it was written
Schultz,
by
the director.
Great director, if that was written by Shakespeare, it would be a Shakespearean tragedy. You have all the elements of a Shakespearean film in there. So, and would I remake it? Good question. So, I asked Eric about remaking Coolie High. That was something that when he and I gained a level of trust, and we had the esterol commodity in common. I said, I want to remake Coolie High. I want to do a draft with you. We'll co-write it together, and we'll modernize it, and we'll make it. And we were working on it, but the original studio that made that film was called American International Films. They're now owned by MGM. MGM owns that catalog, and MGM does not license out their films. They do not. They're very picky with their catalog. I know someone else is trying to make it now, Common, and some other people are trying to remake Coolie High, but MGM's catalog is very protective, and they want to mint for certain things, but they own every film that most blaxploitation films back in the 70s were made by American International Pictures. You'll see that logo after most of these films. MGM wisely bought that whole catalog, so remaking a blaxploitation film, whether it be Blackula or Coolie High, or it's going to be very difficult. Sparkle, a lot of MGM has that on lock. Clay, I know you have some, because you work with Michael Schultz.
Yeah. But when you asked the question, the first thing that popped in my mind was Shaft. Only because I have some wonderful memories of going to the theater with my father, and I think we went to see Shaft at the Goldman downtown at 15th and Market, where it used to be right there. And oh man, Yeah, I have some great memories of Shaft. So.
Did you like the remake of Shaft? Did you like the remake of it? With Samuel Jackson and John Singleton? People killed it.
No, I didn't because, like I said, I smile and have more memories of it. But I'm kind of funny, whereas my thing is, let that classic be a classic. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to redo a lot of films. I mean, you never say never, but if I want to see Shaft again, I'll go rent the DVD and I'll watch it. You know, and with all the you know TNT Jackson films, if I want to see it again, I'll watch it. Even though it'd be great to have a strong female lead, TNT Jackson, you know, or get Christy Love, get Coffee, you know. But I just think that Hollywood is on a track right now where they're like, hey, let's look at all the old stuff. Let's remake it. It's like, well, here's a thought. Why don't you hire some creative people and make some new stuff? Yeah. Make some new classics as opposed to going back. But Hollywood is not run by creative people. They're run by money people, business people. So they just look at the numbers of old things and they're like, hey, well, we can do that again. Yeah. Again, looking at it as a product, as opposed to creative people who can create a new classic. That's my opinion.
What's your favorite Black exploitation film?
You know, I would have to say Buck and the Preacher.
Oh my!
Oh, yeah.
That is that has to be my all-time
favorite Black exploitation.
Yeah, of all time.
I love Buck and the Preacher.
Yeah.
Why?
I thought and I didn't realize it at the time, but just the audacity of them in that film. They were unapologetically and black, and you'll hear me say this over, and that's one of the things in my introduction for this. I talk about that, and that was one of the things I loved about Black exploitation films is that people were unapologetically black.
You think Buck and the Preacher could be today? Somebody remade it. You think it would hold if somebody remade Buck and the Preacher?
Oh yeah. But you ain't gonna get nobody to look like Harry Belafonte.
You're right. All right, never mind.
Doing that, you know, for real.
Right, never mind.
Will Blazing Saddles be considered a blaxploitation film? No, Brooks.
But it fits into it etches into that.
And Richard Pryor wrote it.
You know, exactly.
He helped write it with Mel Brooks.
Exactly.
I mean, the studio wouldn't let Richard Pryor do it.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, so it's real close on that edge, real close on the edge of that. You know, and then I had the opportunity to, when I was in graduate school, work to meet Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte and talk to them about that film, and just getting into. By that time, I understood some of the history, the legacy of not just the film itself, but that time period and African Americans in the United States, and it made the film even more important for me. Understanding that trope, understanding those trickster figures and how they, you know, the little guy overturning the big oppressor. So that film was, and then seeing people, Cicely Tyson, you know, in that film, and, you know, in a way that scene when they ride off at the end and the wind is blowing it's great. It's a great shot. I love that one. Love that one. So we have just waned nostalgic, and this is going to go back to your Spencer Williams' comment about Amos and Andy. It's like when I look at films like Harlem Shuffle and Coming to America and School Days and stuff like that, it has a very gentler, more honest, forgiving look, I think, than mainstream when you look at African Americans in a certain way. When you have that African American director or that African American eye or someone who is, I'll use the term sympathetic, in comparison to where you have I'll use Step and Fetch It as an example. He would often do crossover films during the time of race films, and he was denigrated by the African American community, same as Spencer Williams, for playing these coonish types of characters.
And nobody did it better than him.
And so, but he would do films with Spencer Williams. He would do films with Oscar Micheaux, but he wasn't looked at the same way by the black community when he did those films. And I think part of it may have something to do with the eye of the director and the reaction of the people on film. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and about the specificity that you think maybe certain scripts should have with a director that fits that community.
You said, did you say Harlem Nights? Did you mention that when Hollywood Shuffle?
No, I didn't. I said Hollywood Shuffle, and I said
Hollywood-
I actually had Harlem Nights. I did say Harlem Nights as
I was
well.
gonna say R.I.P. Charlie Murphy. I was
Okay,
gonna
yes,
say
indeed,
R.I.P.
no.
Charlie
Charlie
Murphy.
Murphy.
When your show was
Yes.
Charlie Murphy, did a lot of, because he separated from Eddie Murphy after a while, made a name for himself. That's a whole other topic. But Hollywood Shuffle to me was a powerful movie in a lot of ways, because Robert Townsend took the stereotypes of a lot of blacks and made it in a way that it was accessibly, it was interesting to watch. It was comedic, it was sharp, and it was right on the money. And he put himself in the film as the lead. So he took a risk of carrying his own movie, which is very difficult. I mean, I've seen Clayton put himself in his own works too, and it's hard for an actor puts himself in his own or her own film and directs. It's a great challenge. So that's a benchmark, and I think that only Robert Townsend could have made Hollywood Shuffle. I don't think anyone else could have directed him in that movie the way he directed himself, and that particular message he put out there by black acting school and all the how a black actor can be Juilliard trained and go into this crazy role of playing this killer pimp. I think only a black director can be that nuanced of making something like that. So in that regard, yes, I think that you need someone who really is sympathetic, because there was a lot of that in the movie too, because his grandmother was beating up on him for playing the coonish roles. And I think that he showed that even in the black household, there was division. Some of his family were like, take the chance. Some were saying no. And only, I think, in that situation, using him as a benchmark, I think Hollywood Shuffle is one of the films, with others that you mentioned, where you needed that African-American Helmer to get that message across, especially on a low budget. I think that film was made for what? Hollywood Shuffle was made for credit card money, he said it.
I think 170, no, I think 178,
that's low budget money.
179,000, yeah. Yeah, I mean, a great testament to him, and took a lot of time to do it too. He did it over the course of a couple of years. Going to your point, first and foremost, I'd like to say I give credit to anyone during any era who has been able to make a living in this industry. That's first and foremost. So whatever image that they portrayed, whether I liked it or not, so be it, you were able to make a living. And in the era of Step and Fetch It, mind you, that was technically, was it after The Little Rascals? I think he was after The Little Rascals. But still, I mean, for whatever reason, the things that people say about Amos and Andy was nothing like the character that the actor who renamed himself Step and Fetch It, I don't even know his real name, but that was, obviously his mom didn't give him that name at birth. But Step and Fetch It, the actor, he created a character that a lot of people wanted to watch for whatever reason, and he made a living by doing it. So I take my hat off to him for that. God bless him. What damage did that do for others who wanted to follow in his footsteps? Were they encouraged to be a little Step and Fetch It? I'm sure. Because again, it was proven to be a successful thing that a lot of people would go and watch. It was a successful product. But you know, at some point, being a creative person, you want to do what is driving inside of you. And that is a different thing for different people. What drives me is not the same thing that drives, say, Ice Cube, who, got to take my hat off to that man. I would have never come up with some of the ideas that he did, because we're just on different paths. But man, what a great businessman he's proven to be. I say, you know, so there's nothing negative in that statement whatsoever. It's just a different path, sort of thing. You know, I guess I'm more, people look at me more as a Cosby-esque person because of my history, which I'm very proud of. No matter what other people might say about Bill before, then, or since, there was an image that he wanted to portray, and I got to tell you, not just nationally but internationally, the level that Bill Cosby's work of respect that his work created for the world, for the Black American population, pure awe and respect, man, yeah, I'm proud of that. I don't care what anybody says about Bill right now. I am proud to be part of that legacy. You better believe it.
So I think one of the reasons Stepin Fetchit made it shorter because his name was Lincoln Theodore Monroe Andrew Perry.
What a name.
So Stepin Fetchit was much easier to come
Lincoln
by.
Perry. I could have gone by just calling him Lincoln Perry.
Lincoln Perry.
But,
So-
you know, God bless.
Yeah.
That was his decision.
So looking at this film season, we've seen films made by African Americans such Get Out and Fences, or films starring and focusing on African American subjects such as Hidden Figures do extremely well at the box office, beating all industry expectations. This occurrence is particularly interesting since Hollywood has often claimed that African American movies don't carry the numbers and has used that premise as an excuse not to do high-budgeted African American films with a majority black cast, black director. What do you think these numbers say to Hollywood, but more importantly, what do you think they say to the budding African American filmmaker?
To the budding African American filmmaker, besides aim high, there's some nuances in what you mentioned too, because you said Hidden Figures and then you mentioned Get Out. Well, Hidden Figures was not directed by an African American, but Get Out was written and directed by Jordan Peele.
That's it, starring and focusing.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of hard because a lot of times more money is given to a film. Get Out only had a $4 million budget, and that's pretty relatively low for any film, but it's made $150 million in the U.S., which is phenomenal. Hidden Figures had more money because a lot of the people involved with that film were not African American, so they were able to raise more money. So it's all about the money. African American filmmakers, and I can attest personally because I've done it now for the third time, we don't work with a lot of the Hollywood budget, so we go outside to get money, to raise money. And it's easier to make a return on that. If I made a $4 million movie and they made $150 million, well, Jordan Peele's next film is obviously going to be a lot more budgeted than $4 million. So trust me, Hollywood does take note of what is making a profit for sure. But a lot of films, even Straight Outta Compton, which did phenomenally well, was written by several Caucasians who went to Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and wrote the story, but it was directed by F. Gary Gray. So, your answer to your question, yes, Hollywood is taking notice, and these films are not going to not be made. The question, though, to me, which would be important to me, is I want to see more African Americans being the ones who are writing as well as directing, because then you can really say, like Jordan Peele. I mean, that Get Out movie, in a lot of ways, was very ingenious, and you and I have talked about that many times, the nuances of that film and the hidden messages in there, and the things that may be over some people's heads. I think that film really shows that you can make a very, almost a niche film, because that film could have been made in the 70s, the way it was made, with the interracial situation. And be I think nobody except for probably Jordan Peele, or he might be shocked himself, would know that film would do extremely well. That's a phenomenon, literally.
And one of the things I think, at least for me, looking at the note, I should think, for young African American film makers is that he did it with no special effects.
No.
He just told a clean story, a straight story. It didn't have to have a whole bunch of guns, it didn't have to have a whole bunch of violence, it didn't have to have race cars or any of that. It was just a simple story telling, this young man's perspective about what the world is, at least the world in which they were in, and it was just simply told and beautifully shot.
But Key and Peele, they've already proven themselves to be creative people, so there are a lot of people in LA and Hollywood who, even if they don't understand what he's writing, he's already proven that he has a following and that he knows what he's talking about. He has his finger on the pulse of what people are interested in right now, so he's proven that. So it would be easier for him to raise that money and to get. And even then, it was still a low budget budget that was given to him. I think that, and again, this goes back to the numbers thing, and I got to put it not just on the filmmakers, but for the audience, and some credit has to go to the audiences that go and support people. For the movie I did cover, everybody and their mama saw Cover, but the numbers reflect that most of the people who watch Cover saw the bootleg. We had low numbers, even though everybody's seen the film. I once had a bootlegger come up to me, ask me to sign a copy of, one of his bootlegs of Cover, and he said, "When y'all gonna make a sequel? My people asking for a sequel."
Deep Cover.
And but my thing was like, I said, well, there's never going to be a sequel. He said, why not, man? Everybody loves that movie. Everybody's asking me when you're gonna come out with a sequel. I said, because you're making more profit than a whole bunch of other people who are actually a part of that movie. And he said, oh, you can't tell me that. You can't tell me the little bit of money that I'm making selling my film on the corner is breaking Hollywood. I said, no, because it's not just you. There's 100,000 of you in this country, and if each one of you made $1,000 off my movie,
That's right.
then you have to multiply that number by 100,000 of you, and that went into the pocket of the budget. So now, when someone like Bill Duke, who was a great director,
he was.
and they look at his last film and said, "Hey, your last film, Cover, didn't make the money,
Right,
didn't
that's
make
right.
our money back." And it's like, well, everybody in the mama loves my work. Everybody's seen it. Everybody's seen it. And it's like, yeah, but see, your audience didn't support you. See, so that's the difference there. So, like I said, the last film Bill did was, he did a documentary since then, but the last movie that he did, it lost numbers. Again, we're looking at product.
Yep,
And
that was Not
it
Easily
didn't-
Broken with Taraji Henson and Mars Chestnut. I remember
And
that.
so the thing is, so that when you look at numbers, and it's the last number that reflects you, that's how the industry treats you. And so it's viewed as, okay, your audience, your fans love to steal your work. They don't love to pay and support your work.
I gotta add one thing.
Okay, because I was
I
going to
got-
add something
no,
to
no,
go
you
ahead.
got it.
No, please.
I
No, please,
got to
first.
say something about so Clayton has just made a great statement about how the films are not supported. So this is how Clayton and I have known each other for a while, but we had a long discussion before my last film came out, Changing the Game. And I was like, Clayton, I finally got my second film is done, picked up by Lionsgate. It's gonna be playing in 5 theaters across the country, and hopefully will expand. So Clayton and I spoke. First weekend numbers for any black film in theater are paramount. I'm telling you fact from somebody who's
That's how
done
you're
it.
judged.
I've done it. My film played in one theater in the area in AMC Lowe's Cherry Hill, which wasn't even in Philadelphia. Clayton was there the opening night. He was there on Friday night. My film played. If Clayton and the people would not have come in that weekend for my film, they'd have pulled it because The Avengers was out right there. And The Avengers was on like 10 screens at the Lowe's Cherry Hill. But the theater owner told me.
I saw The Avengers too, bro.
Yeah,
I saw
I saw it too. I saw it too. I was with it. I saw it. I loved it.
I supported both.
But you saw my film on Friday night. On Friday night.
You and Robert down together.
On that first weekend showing, the first showing in the evening, Clayton was there with his wife. They came and they supported, and we got an interview with him and went online. People saw it. Clayton Prince, others went online and testified that they saw the movie, enjoyed the film. But that's what got me 3 more weeks at the Lowe's Cherry Hill, even though Avengers was playing. So he's right. The numbers are key. If Lowe's Cherry Hill didn't think my numbers were any good, my film would have been a 3-day out the door film. But Clayton came, others came, people came. It sustains.
Which is why I stopped doing a film after the whole thing with Cover. I said, let me do a television project, Cream.
Yeah.
And evidently a lot of people liked it. That's another story.
Right.
There's a lawsuit there, but I'll let y'all talk about it because I'm not legally allowed to talk about it. But that goes into a thing of, people will still steal your product, don't they? I'm looking at one person particularly.
Oh Lord.
Some people will steal your product.
And that, I'm gonna piggyback on that. I'm sorry to jump,
No.
that also, the whole note. I think when people buy, I refuse to buy bootlegs. So when people come to bed, and they don't think of it as stealing.
That's right.
They don't understand that when you buy that bootleg of whatever movie you are going to see, you're taking money out of the pockets of those producers and out of those actors. And if you want to see more films like that, you have to stop doing that. Give the artists their due. Why? I don't understand why people feel that it's okay to do that. If it was theirs, they wouldn't. They wouldn't want their stuff stolen. So they have to understand that they are stealing, and that is.
I get why people do it. Movie theater tickets are expensive, $10, $11, $15. Some of them,
agree.
$20 a ticket. And, you want to take a date. Hey, you're up to $40, $50, and ooh, man, don't get no popcorn. And so that's a lot of money, especially if you have a family of 3 or 4 or 5. You're spending a lot of money.
Dr. Hall, let me ask you something, because you watch a lot of good stuff. Why do you think Get Out did so well, though? I mean, why did Get Out make so much money? There's been interracial movies done before about whites and blacks dating. Why did that movie catch on so well, though?
I think one of the reasons I enjoy it, and I think the movie itself, is because of the simplicity of the story. He told the story without all the flash, because in real life it don't happen with flash and fury and all. It's very subtle. Racism, in many cases, he told the story of racism in the way that it happens in most people's lives, and it's so subtle, and they don't even realize until after they walk away and go, wait, did what I happened? Think what I just happened? And you go away, and then, but at the same time, you know, it was, for me, it was that simplicity of it.
Got it.
You know, he didn't do anything that was outrageous that made me go, oh, that wouldn't be realistic. All of it was very realistic for me. And so it was just that simple telling of the story, you know.
I mean, it's a great creative person who is at the helm, telling the story, and that's you know, black, white, or anything in between. Again, that's just when you have a creative person, you know, at the helm, then something great's going to come from that. You know, Richard Pryor, he could just be up there with a microphone, no special effects whatsoever. You didn't even care what he was wearing, and he could make a whole movie because he was that creative force that could make you see and feel what he wanted you to see and feel.
That's right.
So yeah, special effects help. Don't get me wrong. Special effects will help you sell a film, but when people actually go to see the product, what do they take away from it?
Indeed. So speaking of Get Out, and there was a little controversy with the film. Samuel Jackson made a comment about the young actor who played the lead in the play, in the movie, and the comment basically was he wondered what the movie would be like if an American brother had played in that lead. And I wanted to know if y'all had any comment.
We'll never know because an American actor didn't do it. The actor who did do it did a good job.
Yep.
And just like everyone wants that acting challenge, if American actor would love to be able to do an English role. Idris Elba, he does it all the time. So he was an actor. He did a great job. What's the point?
Yeah, and you know, I'm gonna tell you, I have a personal grievance of African Americans who criticize each other in this industry publicly. There's ways to do that when you don't have to do that. You don't see other races of people so quick to always say, well, this person shouldn't have done this. Tyler Perry and Spike Lee had a very huge disagreement in the public about their filmmaking styles and their messages, and it all ended up being just for naught. It just became a public mess. If Samuel Jackson had a problem, first of all, Samuel Jackson admitted he didn't even see the movie. I read an article, he said he didn't even see the movie yet when he made that comment. Well, first of all, why don't you go watch the film first? That would help. Then you could tell if the movie, whatever you want to say about it, but don't be so quick to criticize someone's performance if you haven't seen the film.
So I'm gonna disagree with both of y'all.
Oh my goodness.
So, because I don't think he was actually criticizing the young man's performance per se. He asked an acting question. And it's all about, because part of an actor's job is doing the actor's homework. And so as a director, and being a director, it's much easier to come in there with an actor who has some familiarity with the situation rather than having to teach it all and train them all.
So
and
somebody criticized you without seeing you actually do it?
No, he didn't criticize him. He asked the question, what would the film have been like if it had been an African American playing the role who has those sensibilities of being in that? The one, and you and I have talked about this, so we could talk about Get Out all day. One of the things I said to you that made me kind of go, when I watched the film at one point was the fact that you had this African American brother who was going to his white girlfriend's parents' house somewhere in the country by himself. As African Americans growing up during the time that we were growing up, we were taught we do not go to white people's houses by ourselves the first time by ourselves. You don't do that. You're not taught to do that. You're trained not to do that because you don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know. I don't know those people.
Okay.
So, but he went, and even his friend in the movie said, "Man, you're going by yourself."
I never learned that lesson, but go ahead.
You didn't learn that? You missed that lesson?
No, my parents did not tell me.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
So I grew up in the South. I grew up in the
Yeah,
South, and maybe that was, so it was very much like,
Yes.
Okay, so
Hold up.
the brother goes to this Caucasian girl's house, right? But the actor who played it, he's not the writer of the. He didn't.
No, he didn't, and that's it. And that's
Is he the writer of the film?
No, he's not. And I said that I'm not blaming him for that. I said that was the one point in the film that made me go, But the idea of how one reacts to those situations are going to be different depending upon, once again, your context. Yes, he is a British black of African descent. Okay, and I agree to a certain extent with Samuel L. Jackson when it comes to the history of racism. It's very different in England than it was here in the United States. There were similarities, but there were also differences. The reaction of an African American, a person who had lived in this context, I think would have been different. We would have seen more. It would have been more like his friend who played the PSA. Yes, please.
Yeah, so my thing is, as an actor, one of the things I love about acting is that
you can play anybody.
But not only that. But sometimes when I read something that's so well written, I learn something from it.
Okay.
And it's not like I've ever lived that character. You know, sometimes like a lot of people who played a slave, they never actually lived being a slave.
Right.
But so can you play it off and do it effectively to a point where someone can learn from it? Okay, so this man, he was not raised here. So what? He read this well-written thing, and he did a great job with it. He learned from it. Why is it that he's not allowed to learn? Nobody
said. Once again, I don't think that's what Samuel Jackson's question was. Not the. He was asking about the reaction differences. How would the reaction would have been differently? It would have been different for an African American, a person who had lived in, let's say, the American South. His reactions would have been different. He would.
Director's job. I've never been a cop. I was on Dark Justice for years. I was playing this vigilante. I never I never studied law. So should I have never played that role?
No.
So
I'm not saying you didn't.
So you learn from the roles that you do. Were my reactions differently?
Yes.
And
I'm going to say yes because your perspective is different.
That's right.
As an actor, your perspective. So where you sit in that circle.
I never played a cop. I was on Third Watch. I never was a cop. But you learn certain things, and so it's the director's job to say, Clayton, your reaction should have been different on that.
That's right.
So, but it's the director who hired me, and it's the director's job to make sure that my interpretation was authentic. Period.
I agree. It's the director who's.
We all learn from it.
It's almost like if I look at Samuel Jackson in Django Unchained, when he played the so-called the house whatever, right? And someone says, well, Samuel Jackson, I wonder how that would have role been played if someone that who was 70 or 80 years old played it. You played a person who was younger.
Exactly.
And they made you darker. They made it much darker. They made it much older. What if somebody said, what if they would have got someone like Roscoe Lee Brown or someone
or
Southerner.
Right.
So you got to watch your criticism because I can look at some roles that Samuel Jackson has played as well and says, well, I wonder if somebody else could have played that role besides him.
And no one says that those discussions. I don't think there's anything wrong with those types of discussions. I don't think there's anything wrong with those discussions.
I think we all learn from them.
We do.
Bring Sam on the show next week.
Come on,
Sam.
Come on, Sam.
Sam,
join us in this discussion.
Sam.
So one last question.
I just want to say this. That is the great thing about great performances and great works.
Yes.
We all leave with something
that
we didn't walk into that theater with before.
Right.
We all go on this journey. We all learn something. We all experience something new.
Yeah.
That's not just the audience. It's the actors as well.
That's right.
That's all I'm saying.
So we've talked about some feature films. This has also been a tremendous year for documentaries that focus on African American life. So I'm Not Your Negro. Loved 13th Love and OJ Made in America, which and that one won the best Oscar for best documentary, are prime examples of the power of the genre. What do you think about documentary films and telling the story of the African American experience?
I just finished my first documentary. I'm glad you asked. It's called Where's Daddy? Thank you, brother. Thank you, sister. And it's about how the child support system has affected the African American relationship with men and women over the years. And I'm proud of how the work came out, just getting into festivals now. But documentaries are we were just talking about that earlier. But interestingly enough, the OJ documentary that you mentioned that won the Oscar, just yesterday, the Oscars said now you can't win a documentary Oscar if it's a series, because that was like a series. That's like a 6-7 part miniseries. So I guess because I know I talked to you. I'm Not Your Negro was a great documentary. I could have easily been the winner, but they changed the rules because it was not a long film.
A feature film.
A feature film. So I think that documentaries are another great aspect for how African Americans could tell their stories that we don't see. I mean, there's a lot of them.
I take my hat off to you and anyone else who's done a documentary, because the amount of work
It's murder.
that goes into that, the amount of research
murder.
that goes into doing any kind of documentary on any subject is tremendous.
It's murder.
Me as a writer, I just look in my head and I'm like, what kind of story do I want to? Okay, and I just type out whatever the landscape is of that that thing. And if there's something that's going to be too expensive to shoot, I'm like, well, I'm just going to cut that and do this. That. But as a documentary, you got to go here, you got to go there, you got to interview this person on their time. Have to have a crew follow somebody around. The work that goes into that, I'm amazed. And God bless everyone who does a documentary and does it well. I never say never, but I don't see that in my immediate future, and I love documentaries. I am amazed at people who do them and do them well.
What documentary do you like the best out of the ones you mentioned?
Oh, I'm Not Your Negro.
Why? Because you knew James Baldwin personally?
No, not quite, but just some of the profound realizations in that film. Just the title alone, I Am Not Your Negro. When James Baldwin says that the Negro had to be created. That, there is, and I have said this for years, and friends of mine have heard me say that there is nothing called Negro land. There is not black land. So who invented this? Where did this come from? So I am not those individuals. I am an African American because that's where my roots come from. They come from that continent. So for him to say things that I had already thought about, and then he put them in such a profound statement that the Negro and the word nigger had to be created in order to mess with the psyche of African Americans, to mess with the psyche of Africans who came over, and as a way to, and as long as you believe that, then you are exactly where they want you to be. And so for me, it was profound hearing and seeing that on the screen. And at the same time I was doing a show, and it was funny, Rel and I saw that film together, and I was saying to Rel, whoever did this film is in my head. They need to get out of my head. I mean, similar quotes, similar images is like they're in my head. And so when he came to see the show, he goes like, I see what you're saying, that man was all in your head. So that film really was tremendous for me. So gentlemen,
that's
sorry,
the mark of something that's well written, that everyone walks away thinking this was my story, this was just about me. And it's like, no, it was a universal thing that maybe just hit you. There's I don't want to go too far into this, but with the lawsuit that I'm going through right now, the person that I pitched the story to, he was like, oh man, it's like you're talking about my family. And it's like, well, everyone's going to relate to this. But because he felt like it was hidden, something inside of him, I guess he felt like he had the right to steal it or to heavily borrow from it, saying, oh, well, this is really my family that I'm talking about. But it's like, no, it's like when you write something that touches everyone, then you have to respect that artist. And like you said, with I'm Not Your Negro, what they said, it touched, there was a truth to it. That was universal, that everyone thought it was just me that they were talking about. Like stand-up comedians, sometimes they'll go up on stage and they'll say these personal things that you say, oh my God, I can't believe you said that, but you laugh because it's like, wow, bro, it's not just you.
That
I
universality.
feel that too. It's a universal truth. So, and that's just the mark of a good work and a good writer and a good director.
Great. And then on that note, that's all the time we have. I would like to thank my guest and thank you for watching. You've been watching The Market on CCP TV, the Emmy-nominated educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I'm Ardencie Hall-Karambé, Professor of English and Theater here at the college. See you next time.